before we went into service, we shot small game and that, but it's a lot different when you're shooting a human. I put my M1 up against this major's head, and the major says, "You're in for a court-martial." I mean, there was just thousands and thousands of just skeletons and bodies laying every place. They called it Camp Lucky Strike, but it was the coldest, most miserable place on earth.
Warning: the frontline testimony you're about to hear is, at times, extremely graphic. The realities of war are often difficult, but it's vitally important that these stories are told and the lessons are learned. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, I'm Art Newell. I was with the 65th Division. I was in B Company, the 260th. I had one buddy from Pennsylvania, name was Harry Gower. We got to be good buddies. We both used to go out and hunt small game, and we found out that shooting small game was different than shooting another human. And now Harry, he was a gung-ho guy, and he volunteered both of us to be point men or scouts in our outfit. And I said, "Harry, what are you doing?" He said, "We can do it." I said, "Yeah, we can do it." First real battles we get into was in Struth, Germany. And the captain said, "Newell, Gower up front." So we started through this woods. A German come running out in front of us, and Harry got him, and next thing I know, another one come out, and I got him. And we come to the edge of the woods, and there was pine trees and bushes, and we were hiding underneath them, peeking out. And this big German come running out, and he happened to be a Nazi. They just had dropped them. They were paratroopers, and when he come running at us, and Harry wanted to shoot him, I said, "No, don't shoot." I said, "If we shoot him, he falls out in the middle of the field there. They're all going to be all over us," because we could see there was a whole platoon of maybe 40 of them. Well, we're underneath these pine bushes, and this big German comes running right where we were, and Harry had his M1 sticking out from one of the bushes, and this guy was in such a big hurry he never even seen the rifle sticking out. And while he come running up there, he had to go to the bathroom real bad. So he actually stood there and urinated on Harry's M1. And so I looked at Harry, I said, "Shoot him." So Harry pulled the trigger, and I'm sure he hit him right in the groin or someplace near there. Well, when he was so big when he come down, he come crashing through the pine tree, and his face was in inches of my face. And we looked at each other in the eye, and he said, I didn't see you." I said, "You wasn't supposed to. We're Americans." And about that time, the second one come running up, and he was another officer. Well, I was ready, and I got him. I hit him right in the cheek, and he must not have had his helmet strapped on because I blew his helmet off when the bullet went through his head. So when he went down, the rest of them realized something was happening, so they all come running, a whole bunch of them, about 40 of them come running up there. The one that Harry had shot was still alive. And I put my M1 up against his head, and we told him, we said, "Tell you guys to surrender, you're surrounded, I'll blow your head off." So every one of them surrendered, about 40 of them. Well, about that time, the captain knew something was going on. Well, I had the walkie-talkie, and so I told him, I said, "You guys better come on in." I said, "We got a bunch of them." And about that time, the captain, 200 guys in the company, they all come bursting through the bushes about that time. Well, we had them all captured by that time. And so the captain got on the phone, and he called back to one of the generals or something and told them who we had, and they said, "Well, they're Nazis, execute them." So they took them down over the hill, and we heard the shooting, and so Harry and I went running up to see what happened. And here they are executing all these guys. They had them lined up against a barn. They shot them all. And we come walking back up to where the company was, and I said to the captain, they shot all those guys. He said, you wasn't supposed to see that. And I said, well, we did. The captain put us in for a Bronze Star for that. Harry and I was the point man when in the streets there. We went into the woods, and all at once, a German jumped up right in front of us. And, Harry got the first one, and then I turned, and another one jumped up, and I got him. And but these were just individual shootings, and we told what we did was when they went down, there was a lot of trees. We just take their weapon and smash it against the tree, and it was gone. Then there was another time shortly after that, we come up on this machine gun nest, and the Germans opened up on us, and so we started shooting back, and so all at once one of the guys managed to get a grenade into the machine gun nest. So we walked up and we took their rifles and busted them against the machine gun. That put their rifle out of commission and knocked the machine gun out of commission. Well, we turned to walk away, and here one of the Germans must have had a pistol in his boot or something, because he shot one of my sergeants. And here we thought they were all dead, and but the one was still alive, and so the whole platoon, every one of us opened up. The bodies were laying there, and everybody shot them half a dozen times, each one of the bodies, because of what they did. And so you talk about overkill, I mean, but you just had to do it. After the Battle of Struth, we come on to one of the first concentration camps that they found was Ohrdruf. And nothing but dead people with skin and bones and stuff. And I think it was a mile or two before we got to Ohrdruf, we could see this black smoke going up, and we wondered what it was. Then we started to see these dead bodies along the road, and they were nothing but skeletons, So we got into Ohrdruf, and it was, like I say, the first concentration camp that they discovered. General Eisenhower and Bradley and Patton, they found out about it, and they come in there to visit it. Well, Patton was, the roughest, toughest guy going. Well, he got so sick he had to go around the corner and throw up. They went into the town there, and they said to the mayor and his wife, and they said, well, why did you know about this? They claimed they didn't know anything about it. So what they did, they made all the German, not all but as many German people as they get together, made them come out and view the camp, see what was there. And so then they made the German civilians take these bodies and bury them. But I mean, how do you bury thousands of bodies? Actually we had a couple of the guys from the 65th Division years later went back to they viewed Ohrdruf. Well, by that time they had taken all the bodies and took boulders and buried them, and people didn't seem to know anything about it. They went in to question the mayor and his wife at a little town that was right near there, and they had gone out and viewed it. They went home and committed suicide. It was so bad they couldn't live. I mean, there was just thousands and thousands of just skeletons and bodies laying every place. Well, what they were doing, they had like a steel mining car or something like that, and an oven. They would pile as many bodies as they could in there, and they'd put them in this oven and burn them. how the people in that town said that they didn't know what was going on. It's hard to say. But from what I understand, they would actually take the ashes from the burnt bodies. They were selling it to the German people for fertilizer. The reason we went into Struth, one of our other companies, C Company, was in there, and the Germans attacked them. And when C Company ran out of ammunition, the Germans ordered them out of the buildings. Well, they took them out and they lined them up against the building and shot them all. And our company had to go in and kill the Germans. So when we went in to get the Germans, and we did capture all of them. Harry and I captured them all. Well, meanwhile, battalion headquarters called Captain Baker and said that they needed to execute these guys because they had lined up all of our soldiers from C Company and murdered them. So it was payback, really. So they took them all down the hill, lined them up, and shot them all. And when Harry and I realized that the shooting was going on, we ran down to back those guys up, and we realized what happened. We come back up. Captain Baker said, "You weren't supposed to see that." We were told what had happened, and so we went in. We mainly went in to see if we could rescue any of the GIs from C Company. Well, they were all outside lined up, and they'd been murdered. I'm sure there was 100 or so. They just lined them up and shot them. When Captain Baker reported back to headquarters, that we'd captured them, and first thing they said was, shoot them. Mainly the ones I saw killed were the ones at Charlotte when we got into the minefield. Harry and I had more experience. We'd gone to a special training session on mines before it all happened. The Germans were super great at building mines and booby traps and stuff. And so we moved out of there, and one of the guys stepped on a landmine, and so we hollered, well, Harry and I had training, for booby traps and stuff like that, and so we started hollering for the guys, don't move, don't anybody move. Well, just happened to be one of our medics. He stepped on one mine and then fell, and when his body fell, he fell on another mine and just blew him away, And so we're hollering, don't anybody move, don't anybody move. Well, it just happened to be, I had this one big lieutenant, his name was Lieutenant Ford. Now this guy was a huge guy. He was a professional football player for one of the teams down in Texas, and blew his leg right off. And so we managed to, quite a few of us I think it took about 4 of us to carry him back. He was so big. And so we got him back through the pots and pan factory, and he actually survived the war. Sergeant Audie was a different type of sergeant. I mean, he was like a father figure. I mean, he always talked to you like another person, or not that you were, a GI or what. And so it was such a loss when we lost him. Well, in Charlotte, and Harry and I were standing guard duty at the window of the house that we were at. What we did, we always had, like, say, a squad stick together. And there's at that time there were like 10, 12 guys in a squad. The main guys were in the basement, and we were upstairs guarding the entrance. And Sergeant Audie come up to say, how are you boys doing? And he made the mistake of stepping in front of the window, and sniper got him right in the chest, and he died instantly. Well, we had a medic in the basement. We notified him right away. He came up and checked him, and he said he'd gone. So the next day we had to evacuate and take Sergeant Audie's body back to the pot and pan factory where grave detail would always meet us at the same spot. And they picked up the body, they took the body back, and we received some food and water supplies, and we took that back to the house where we were staying. And but anyways, what we realized after what had happened, when the Germans attacked us, Harry said, somebody coming, and we looked. I said, hey, they're Germans, look at the helmets. You couldn't tell by the color of the uniform because it was dark, but the shape of the helmet gave them away. So we opened up, we each had machine guns, grease guns, and we opened up on them, and we kept mowing them down. And meanwhile, a German must have been sneaking up along the wall underneath, and he lobbed a grenade right through where we were shooting. And I don't know, maybe he got his arm blown off, I don't know, but at least he got the grenade in, and we heard that grenade. They called him a potato masher, and you could just hear that thing rolling around on the floor. We realized if we could throw it out in 5 seconds, it was okay, but we couldn't catch up to it rolling around in the dark. So I took a dive for the basement, and the concussion of the grenade picked me up, and we had a blackout curtain at the bottom of the steps, so we had 10 guys down there, backups. Blew me through the curtain, knocked all those guys down with my body weight. And Harry, he kind of rolled over the corner where he got wounded. And so Harry was out of commission for a couple months. Finally, after, I don't know, about 2 months, Harry come back to the outfit, and we got together. Well, you always had to be cautious. From what we found out, the Germans were the best, at that time, were the best snipers in the world, I mean, they were good. But like I say, I'm a small guy, and I figure, well, small guy is a smaller target. The Germans pretty well know that a lot of the taller guys become officers, and so we figured the Germans would be more apt to shoot the big guys. But I do know that there was a couple of times that when the Germans opened up with those machine guns, even being small, when bullets go by your head that close, sounds like a nasty bee in a bad mood. One of my close buddies, he got in it. He had a what you call a tank grenade on the end of his rifle. Now the only way you can do that, you have to put a blank cartridge in the chamber. That blank cartridge forces that grenade out, and it propels 100 feet or so. So we get in a fight, and he wouldn't shoot. And I said, hey, open up on those guys. I said, they're going to overrun us. He said, I'm not wasting my grenade. Well, when we get into the town of Struth, we could hear this tank when it come rumbling by. He got right up to the end of the street. He runs out there with his grenade. He shoots the tank. He forgot to pull a pin out of the grenade. It never went off. It hit the side of the tank, and what it did was alert the Germans. And so the Germans backed the tank up, turned the machine gun down the street, and opened up on us. But we managed to either get to the left or the right, one way or the other, get into the house, and the tank moved on with it and never got us. But the guy's name was Dietrich, and we always teased him about we said, well, you finally got your tank. Well, being in the infantry, we slept in foxholes every night. And so we finally, In the daytime, your feet were all either wet and frozen. And so some of the guys actually took their boots off at night when they got in their foxhole. Well, next morning their boots were frozen. They couldn't get them back on. So we had to start sleeping with our boots on. The boots were wet and everything, but we had to sleep with them on. So I told Harry, I said, this is ridiculous. I said, it's freezing cold, and this storm was coming, so I said, let's put pine branches over our foxhole and keep the wind out. And so we did that, and it snowed at least 2 foot of snow that night, and just covered the top of our foxhole so full of snow. With the body, 2 guys with their body heat, we got warm and we fell asleep. The first time we fell asleep like that. During the night, our 200 guys in the company, 200 guys moved out. They left. And so I always teased Harry about being the great white hunter, you know. And so I said, okay, great white hunter, 200 guys, track them. With 2 feet of snow, you couldn't track anybody. So we decided we were on our own by that time. So we wandered into this little town, and there was a house right on the corner. I said, Harry, let's get in there and get out of the cold. No roof on the house, no windows in the house or anything, but I mean, it's cold. So it was so cold, we crawled in the house, and we ripped drapes off the windows and stuff, and the carpet off the floor. We covered up with everything we could find, we covered up with. And we fell asleep. Next thing I know, Harry nudged me, he said, you hear that? Well, it just happened to be, the whole room was full of Germans. I mean, these were common German soldiers at that time, you know. And I said, what are we going to do? I said, let's lob it. I said, we're all covered up here and everything. Let's each throw a grenade out. And he said, no. He said, they're getting ready. He could speak German. And he said, they're getting ready to leave. He said, just be quiet. So we laid there until they left. We got up, looked out the window, and there must have been 200 of them out in the street. They were forming to do something. And so we just laid there then. And they left. Couldn't find our company. We had no idea where the company was, so we wandered around for, I don't know, 2 or 3 days. Just hunting the company, we couldn't find them. So finally, after 2 or 3 days, we ran into a couple of GIs, and they were from the C Company. And we asked them, said, hey, you have any idea where B Company is? They said, yeah. They're down this way, so they pointed us in the direction. So we finally caught up to B Company, and they said, where you guys been? Well, we went on with the company, and actually we ended up at the Siegfried line, and it was in Metz. And here the Siegfried line, apparently from what we understand, Hitler had built that years ago, and he said it was going to last 2,000 years, nobody could break through it. And what it was a bunch of what they called tiger teeth. They stuck up out of the ground, and he figured that at that time in Germany or any place, they didn't have very big tanks. And they tested them, and the tanks could get across the board without throwing a track or something. So what happened, as the war got moved on, the Americans built bigger tanks and bigger cannons and stuff, and instead of going around the Siegfried line, they just blowed it up and just moved right on through it, and it slowed us down a little bit, but didn't stop us. The Germans there were pillboxes spaced ever so often along it, and the pillboxes were harder to penetrate than the tiger teeth was. We tried sneaking in at night and throwing stuff in the portholes, you know, but they had the area approaching the things booby trapped, and there was a lot of guys got their legs blown off and stuff with booby traps approaching the pillboxes. One way or the other, we worked our way up, and a couple of guys managed to get a couple grenade into the hole. Like I say, we were young kids, 18, 19 years old, and when they ended up passing that law that 19-year-olds couldn't go overseas, and we were already over there. So what happened? The outfit that I trained with, when we got over there, they were 19 years old, and so the older guys, they had moved into another company, and they all ended up in the bulge. And from what I understand, most of them were killed in the bulge because, I mean, they were a little 19, I was only 18. And so we survived because we were younger, and the 19-year-olds, like I say, were most all of them killed in the bulge. Being as we were only 18, we missed that one. Luckily. That's why I'm still here, I guess. When I first went in, I went into Camp Blading, Florida. Well, that's, like I say, that's where we got our basic training. Well, that was when they passed a law that said you had to be 19, you couldn't go overseas. So then I was shipped to Camp Shelby, Mississippi. One sergeant that he was a German Jew, and I wonder why they've got this German Jew teaching us. Here to come find out that this guy was so smart. I think it was 1929. He was in the German army in Germany, and maybe every week or so, one of the guys would disappear. And the guys would say, "Hey, where did so-and-so go?" They said, "He got transferred to another camp." And he said, "What do you mean another camp?" He said, "He got transferred." Well, here, after this went on and on for a while, and so many of them disappearing, these German soldiers disappearing, that they wonder what the heck's going on. So they come to find out that they were sent to other camps, but they were concentration camps. And they were German soldiers, but they were Jewish. So they sent them to these concentration camps, and naturally they were murdered there. So when Sergeant Dipple found that out, he decided he's going to come to this country. Well, when he come to this country, he didn't know anything but Army stuff. So the first thing our Army did is, "Hey, we need this guy." And at first I didn't like him because, well, the guy could speak Jewish, he could speak German, he could speak English. But he had a bad lisp, and it was hard to understand him. We'd get out there on the drill field, we could hardly understand him. And why would they have him? So come to find out, after we went overseas very long, and he disappeared. And so what happened, battalion headquarters found out about him. They knew that he was Jewish. They knew that he could speak English and German and everything else. So they said, "We need him." So they took him out of our outfit, and they made an interpreter out of him. So the war went on for a while, and we captured about 100 Germans. And they said, "Okay, we got to take them down to this place down here." So we marched them down we went to this little town where he was. And they said, "Take him up to that guy sitting up there in that chair." We walked up, and here was Sergeant Dipple. And he was interviewing all these German soldiers, finding out what was going on. So they actually put him to work questioning all these German soldiers, which helped us find out what the Germans were thinking and what they were doing. And he ended up being quite a great guy, and I learned to appreciate him. We went from there by rail car to Camp Shanks, New York. And actually, they loaded us on boats in the dark at night because they didn't want the Germans. And from what I understand, they realized that there were some submarines out in the water. They're spying on us. So they didn't want the Germans to know how many troops there was or where he was going. So they actually put us down the bottom of the ships, and we weren't allowed up on deck at all. We left Camp Shanks in the middle of the night sometime. We didn't even see the Statue of Liberty because we weren't allowed on deck. And even at that time, we didn't know whether we was going to the Pacific or Europe or where we was going. They wouldn't tell us. And so we ended up in the English Channel, and German submarine was in the channel there. And we had a whole group, I don't know, quite a few ships. And the German sub shot the propeller, the rear end off of one of the ships. It didn't sink. They managed to get it back to shore. We ended up, from there we went to what they call Camp Lucky Strike. And it was not lucky. It was the coldest, miserable place on earth. We get in there and we weren't actually supposed to be there because the German sub had caused them to change their plans. We ended up in Le Havre, France, like I say, the coldest, and it had a bad snowstorm there, and there was tents, big, huge tents that would hold at least 16 men or so, rolled up in a ball under the snow. So they had to dig these tents out of the snow, and we had to put them up in the cold and freezing weather. And we didn't have the proper clothing on because we were supposed to be there. And they didn't have the right food. They didn't have hardly any food for all these guys. And so we would get in line. We'd take most of the day to get through the line to get a few bites of food. By that time it was and we only had 2 meals a day was all we got, and they were quite skippy. And so by the time you get through the line, it's time to get back in line for your next meal, because there's too many thousand guys and no food, no supplies. So what they did, they had these big 50-gallon drums. They filled them with water, and they had some hams that were, I don't know where they found them, but they had us guys at least an inch of mold off the hams, and then threw the mold away and threw the hams in the barrel. And they boiled these hams, and that's what we had to eat. So I think almost everybody in the outfit got sick with diarrhea, and so it was miserable. Before we went into service, we shot small game and that, but it's a lot different when you're shooting a human. They were fighting for their country, was fighting for ours. But later on, when we run into the Nazis, it was a lot easier because we knew what they were. So after Struth, we came to the Danube River. The Danube River was, as everybody knows, a famous river in Germany. And being in the infantry, they found some rickety old wooden boats. Everybody had oars to paddle with. But a couple of the boats, somehow they didn't have oars, and the guys used their rifle butts to row. And you had to aim upstream as much as you could and paddle as hard as you could to get across. And the whole time, the Germans are shooting mortars into the river. And you have to understand how a mortar works. I mean, they actually would penetrate the water and blow up when they get down, and when it blew up, it was like a geyser coming up like Old Faithful. It just rocked your boat all over the place, and the we finally got across though. And when we got across, we had this huge hill to go up. Well, when we got up about halfway up the hill, we ran into where these guys, the Germans were stationed. They were shooting the mortars. So we managed to wipe them out. Well, meanwhile, a good sergeant of mine, a good buddy of mine, got shot. Actually, he was shot in the back by one of our own men. What happened, he raised up to shoot the guy that was shooting the mortar, and he was hit in the back. Well, he was so seriously wounded, we said, well, we talked to the other guys, and about half the guys went up the hill to finish taking the mortars out, and a couple of my buddies and I, we dragged, his name was Sergeant Tilden. We had to drag him back down the hill to get him in the boat, to get him across the river to get help. We got him down there. Well, a boat come in, and we're trying to put him on the boat, and this big, fat American major come over, and he said, hold it. He said, lay him over there. And so I said, he's going to die. I said, get him back. He said, I'm saving those boats for people that's going to survive. He said, he's not going to survive. Lay him down there, and I put my M1 up against this major's head, and I said, I told the guy in the boat, I said, get him in the boat and get him over. So the major said, you're in for a court-martial. What's your name? And I said, I'll tell you what. You follow me to the top of that hill. I'll give him my name. He said, I'm not going anyplace. I said, well, I am, and I took off up the hill, joined the rest of the guys, and we ended up taking out the mortars, and Sergeant Tilden survived. Yeah, when we got to the top of the hill, there's some snipers, and these snipers and the spotters for artillery net, they love church steeples. So there's a sniper up in the church steeple, and one of my buddies, I can't think of his name, he got wounded by a sniper. And so we called a guy and got a guy up there with a bazooka, and the bazooka's one awesome weapon. And this guy on the bazooka, he blew that church steeple up, and we moved on. And so we come to another house where a German was up in the top of the second floor of the house shooting a machine gun out, and we couldn't move. So we had a guy in our outfit named was Dan Mallory. And Dan Mallory, he had actually in civilian life been if anybody remembers Joe Louis, the boxer. Dan Mallory was a sparring partner for Joe Louis, so he had an arm on him, and we said, got Dan up there. We said, Dan, can you put a hand grenade in that window? He said, I sure can. He come up there, and the first shot, he put the hand grenade right in the window, and it must have been 50 or 100 feet away. And he put that hand grenade right in that window, and it knocked that German out. Well, I don't think there's in any cities at all that there was any windows left in the houses. The concussion just blew them all out, and hardly any of them ever have a roof on them. And I do remember the one time we went into this, being infantry, we dug foxholes and slept in foxholes every night. But this one particular day, for some reason, we went into this little town, and they decided that they're going to put us in whatever house that had a half a roof on it or something, because I think it was raining hard or something. And I looked up, and here's this huge bomb sticking out of the ceiling. The tail fins of the bomb were stuck in the ceiling, and it was hanging down. It was so huge it must have been dropped out of an airplane. I don't know if it was American or German, which it was. And so we stuck outside real quietly and told the sergeant, we said, hey, take a look in there. So he looked up and he said no, and so they put guards on the door outside so none of the guys could go in there because they figured, there were still explosions and stuff going on, and we figured the vibration that bomb was going to come down out of there would blow everything away. But we ended up moving out of the town, and as far as I know, the bomb never went off. It could still be there today, I don't know. What I do know is that Hitler had all this slave labor, and what we found out that the German 88 was the most awesome gun they had. I mean, it could shoot a low-flying airplane down, it could shoot a tank, and like I say, with us living in foxholes, one of those, you could hear the 88 coming over. It just had the strangest, and as soon as that noise stopped, the bomb was coming straight down. And so we managed to crawl a little deeper into our helmet and a little deeper into our foxhole. And if you was down in your foxhole clear to the bottom, if it hit about 10 feet out from the foxhole, it blew up in the air. Maybe all it did was drop a lot of dirt and rocks and everything on you to cover you with that. But it didn't harm you. I'm sure it has something to do with my hearing today, but anyways, once in a while one of those bombs would hit maybe 10 feet from you and it didn't go off. So we come to find out that the German prisoners that Hitler depended on so much, making these bombs and stuff, would conveniently forget to put the fuse in. That 88 could land 10, 20 feet from you, bury itself in the ground and not go off. So I'm sure they've got thousands and thousands of them buried over there right now. Well, what we did was we'd go into these little towns. We'd have to, naturally, like I said before, all the windows were blown out, the roofs were all half off, and we would have to go in and bust into these places. And once in a while, we'd find half a dozen or so Germans. If they were in someplace like that, they surrendered right away. And but what we did was just, if we realized that, and sometimes even without not realizing, what we'd do is just throw a hand grenade in the door, and then go in and shoot any survivors. When you throw the hand grenade in, if there's any Germans in there, we tried to make sure there's no civilians in there before we throw the grenade in. Somebody would holler in or something, and after we threw the hand grenade in, the Germans that were in there were pretty well stunned, and all we had to do was shoot them. Quite often what we'd do, we'd go into some place like that, the Germans all had what they call these root cellars, and they were pretty good at preserving food. And we'd break in and we'd find that and eat it. But some of they had this German bread, and it was brown and almost black. And it was almost sour, but I mean, it seemed to keep good, and we'd cut chunks of that off and throw it in our pack and carry it with us, and we'd eat that. When we run out of K rations, we'd eat that. Sometimes we would even, with the German soldiers, if we searched their pack, if they had any bread or anything left over, we'd save it and we'd eat it later. But I mean, for some reason, our army had trouble keeping food supplies up to us. We always swore that the quartermaster and the guys in the back were eating it before it was sent up to us, but I don't know. From there, we went to Regensburg, and Regensburg was a big rail yard, and we got into there, and I mean, there was railroad ties and everything bent all over the place, and so Regensburg was actually only about 3 weeks, I think, from the end of the war. We had really bombed it really bad, and so the civilians were all gone. But we did run into, you know, a lot of the, at that time we called them the DPs, the displaced persons. And these poor people with little babies, and they were using baby buggies and wagons, anything they could find to put everything they owned. And no place to go. Sometimes we had like candy bars and stuff, and we give it to these people, especially the little kids, and that would, they really enjoyed chewing gum, of all things, but because they could chew it. And but we did. We were infantry, and we couldn't carry a whole lot. And in those days, we had what they call the K rations, and little cans of cheese, little different things. We were hungry ourselves, but we shared what we had.